Okay, dear ladies and gentlemen, I see that all of you have joined us, and I would like to welcome you at this online webinar organized by the Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung in the Baltic states in partnership with the Eastern Europe Study Center. I'm Linas, Kojala, Director of Eastern Europe Study Center, and it's a great pleasure for me to welcome you all at a discussion on a very important topic for all of us, I imagine, the virus of disinformation, how to deal with social media. I'm sure we will today be discussing how rapidly the world around us is changing and how important social media has become for our daily lives. But also that poses some challenges, and we all understand that spread of disinformation, especially at the time of the pandemic, but beyond even that is one of the biggest challenges for today's political communities all around the world. We also sometimes use the term infodemia, which is used to describe the magnitude of the problem that we are currently trying to deal with. We also discuss about how to regulate social media better in order to be prepared to tackle at least some of these issues. So I'm sure that today's discussion will enlighten us on the newest trends and possibilities for the future. But before I introduce to you the fantastic panel that we have for today's event, I would like to invite Ms. Elisabeth Bauer, head of the Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung in the Baltic states, to say some opening words. Please.
Thank you, Linas. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, I'm very heartily welcome you to this event. I do know that it's very warm weather outside, so it's really, you are the heroes today to join us for this discussion. But I think it's a really very important discussion at the moment, as we all know that, especially regarding, for example, the upcoming elections in Germany this year and France next year, there will be a lot of attacks from other side, from the nice trolls, from our friends, that we have to deal with on the one hand. On the other hand, there's always something we can do ourselves. And I think that's one of the main things we have to look after, how to deal with social media on our side and how we use it. I think that's one of the things where we can really do a lot of things that it will go forward. Thanks a lot for being with us, and I give the floor back to Linas Kojala.
Thank you, Ms. Bauer. It's always a pleasure for us to cooperate on such important events. Now I would like to introduce the panel that we have for today to discuss the issue from various perspectives. So we are joined by Ms. Rasa, Public Policy Director and Head of EU Affairs at Facebook. We will also be very soon joined by Ms. Rasa Juknevičienė, who is a member of the European Parliament and is a bit late because she has her primary responsibilities at the Parliament at the moment. We are also joined by Viktor Denisenko, who is a communications expert and assistant professor at Vilnius University. And last but certainly not least, Dr. Susanne Spahn. She's a political scientist, independent researcher, as well as an associate fellow at Vilnius Institute for Policy Analysis. So I will ask each of the panelists to make a short intro speeches of up to 10 minutes. Then we will have a short discussion with some follow-up questions from my side. But I will also encourage those who've joined us today on Zoom to be really active and engaged in our discussion by either asking a question after the panelists make their introductions using your video and audio, or by just using the questions and answers button on your Zoom pages. So you can also ask questions in written throughout the event. Do not wait till the last minute. So hopefully we'll have an engaging discussion and lots of information to share. And without further ado, I would like to give the floor to the first speaker, Ms. Sala, please.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me here today. I repeat myself always in this kind of events, but I couldn't highlight it enough how important it is for me to engage with you in all 27 member states. I come from Finland myself, and I know how important it is that we are not focusing in the EU only to the big countries, but in every 27 member states, we need to have this kind of engagements to tackle some misinformation and disinformation, also what comes to social media. But let me start by saying that Facebook was originally designed to connect friends and family, as we all know. And yes, we are excellent at that. But as numerous people started to channel their political views through our platforms, it's been used in unforeseen ways with societal consequences that were never anticipated at the first place. The important notion is that most other forms of political engagement favors with the most wealth, existing networks, and visibility in traditional media, as we all know, but not social media. Around the world, social media is making it easier for people to have a voice, to discuss issues, organize around causes, and also, importantly, hold our leaders accountable. We know examples from our own continent where there is no media freedom or freedom of expression. However, it has to be said that in 2016, we at Facebook were far too slow to recognize how bad actors were abusing our platforms. Today, we are a very different company. Since then, we have been working diligently to neutralize different risks and also actors on our platforms. Because let me be clear, not our users or our customers or us as a company want to see malicious actors or hate speech on our platforms. We as a company do not benefit from this kind of bad behavior in any way, and we take our responsibility utmost seriously. At Facebook, we differentiate between false or misleading content, which we consider misinformation, and malicious behavior or actors who share harmful content in an organized way and strategically, which we define as disinformation. We tackle the integrity of the information environment through addressing both misinformation and influence operations, which require different approaches. Let me start with behavioral side. Our influence operations IO threat report provides unique insights into our efforts to tackle influence operations derived from 4 years of investigative and enforcement work. I'm happy to share this report with all of you after this event. During these 4 years, we have worked to build a collective response and developed policies, automated detection tools, and enforcement frameworks to tackle deceptive actors. On the content side, our efforts to tackle misinformation continue to grow in sophistication and effectiveness over time, guided by our remove, reduce, and inform strategy. For example, over the last year, we have taken aggressive steps to limit the spread of COVID-19 misinformation and connect people with reliable information. We were among first signatories of the EU's Code of Practice on Disinformation. I was still working in the European Commission when we were doing this work together with tech companies, and I'm really happy to be this side of the table now to take this responsibility further. The review of this code that is not now ongoing is an opportunity to improve consistency of its enforcement and monitoring, while at the same time maintaining its collaborative approach, which already paved the way to strong cooperation between platforms and regulators. Here we are working very closely with the European Commission. But I have to say that even we acknowledge our huge responsibility to tackle misinformation and disinformation, and we take action every day, we cannot do this alone. Which is why we want to engage with you today, lawmakers, private companies, civil society, but also with all of you who uses our platforms every day. Because I encourage everyone to go to check their privacy and security on different platforms, because our users are the ones who needs to also understand what is going on these different platforms and how to use them. It is constant balancing exercise, providing as big as possible remit of freedom of speech, and yet protecting our users from harm. Safety of our community globally is very, very important for us. And we have over 35,000 people working on safety on our platforms. That being said, striking this balance between freedom of expression and integrity of platform by finding new ways of connect people to accurate and authoritative content is something that we as a public policy do together with our safety people on daily basis. And we do that in several ways. So let me just quickly give you a few concrete examples. We work with fact checkers and we flag content that is false. And we create hubs for authoritative content such as COVID Information Center you have seen in your own member states, in your own language. And then also we have a hubs, for example, tackling gender-based violation and several others. We reduce the distribution of misinformation that does not violate our community standards, but it undermines the authenticity and integrity of our platform. And we remove the content that does go against our community standards. And everyone can check those community standards when they join our platform. And we really believe that this is the most impactful way forward. If we simply would remove all posts flagged by fact checkers that are false as false, the content would still be available elsewhere on the internet, other platforms, around dinner tables, and so on and so forth. But when we leave this content up and we label it or flag it with the research from fact checkers, or we point to people to reliable information, we provide people with important information and facts and context, rightful context. And therefore, we also built this kind of a critical thinking, which leads me to my last point. Because beyond content moderation work, digital citizenship, media and digital literacy are a huge part of the fight against misinformation and disinformation. We need to equip people with the skills they need to participate constructively in online conversations. And here we have teamed up with the European Commission, with civil society, researchers, and communities around this continent, and of course also globally. However, this is not always sufficient. Clear regulatory framework is needed at the EU level. And as Mark Zuckerberg already said years ago, we are pro-regulation as a company because we recognize that as a private company, yes, we have a huge responsibility and we take it utmost seriously at the moment with our community standards. But we don't think that this should be left to private companies alone. But we need democratically elected decision makers to set the rightful regulatory framework going forward what comes to regulation on our platforms. And here we understand how important it is from our side to engage and have this kind of a conversations. So looking forward to having a conversation and any questions you might have. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Maybe just a quick follow-up question on what you mentioned on the regulatory framework, which is needed, as you agree. What tangible achievements do you see over the last couple of years in this sense, especially in Europe, because this discussion has been ongoing? And what do you intend or seek to achieve over the next year or two, especially again on the regulatory framework on social media?
Well, as we know, our regulators are quite slow to tackle this internet regulation 2021. However, EU has made a really significant progress now. We have the Digital Markets Act, we have the Digital Services Act now on the table of the co-legislators in the European Parliament and in the European Council. And I know that in Lithuania also, I'm sure that this discussion is now ongoing, what kind of a regulation we actually want to see at the EU level and what we want to see in the member states level. The problem is that if we will have a lot of regulation what comes to our internet and platforms like us in the national level, it will fragment this European market ever more. So that's why it would be great to have as much regulation as possible at the EU level. What we hope as a company is to see also clear definition, what is unlawful, what is lawful, what is hate speech. I know how difficult it is to define these things, But it is the responsibility, I think, also of our democratically elected decision makers to make these definitions so that also people know, our citizens in the European Union know what is okay to do on these platforms and what is not, and for us also to have a clear regulation. So let's hope that these co-legislators will find their agreement maybe next year. But since this far, it is still in ongoing process.
Thank you very much for your thoughts. I would now like to give the floor to Mr. Viktor Denisenko.
Thank you, Linas. So before I will start about nowadays situation, I want to remember some funny things, funny from my point of view. For example, in year 1993, Newsweek published a cartoon where was two dogs near computer, and one dog saying to another that you know, on internet no one knows what you are a dog. So it's first point. And second point, when we today talking about trolls, I also want to remember that in year 2003, in Russian scientific journal Vestnik Interneta was published a very interesting article with title "The Virtual Eye of the Big Brother." And in fact, it was, I think, first discussion about trolls. So things we're talking about today not new. And but I think that we should stress that changing social networks and internet in general changing our lives, and sometimes very difficult to find this border between, for example, real life and virtual life, because the biggest question, what happens in social networks, in Facebook, in Twitter, it's virtual life or it's real life. Everything is connected today. So really today we have many challenges, and in Lithuania, I will talk today more from the perspective of Lithuania. In Lithuania, we have many challenges. We're talking a lot about Kremlin propaganda, about these measures which Kremlin propaganda implementing in internet, in social networks, and we also talking about the most important question, what we could do. And already in Lithuania, in fact, we have some examples, some good examples, and maybe some not very good examples. I just want to remember to audience that so-called internet elves born in Lithuania. And it's an initiative of debunk.eu, and the idea was that if in internet we have some trolls, we also could have some elves which could respond to this challenge, to this issue. And in fact, elves is a good example. Also today in Lithuania, we're talking about so-called virtual patrol by Lithuanian police. And this example is maybe more difficult, and it's more discussions about this example, because when in public sphere this idea was presented, people in internet start talking about, oh, it's not good thing, it's big danger for so-called freedom of speech. It's police will persecute people because people something writing in internet and social networks, publishing some faults which maybe not, which Lithuanian authorities will not like. And I am much more optimistic because I think that first of all, the freedom of the speech is not anarchy of the speech. Yeah? When we're talking about some kind of freedom, it means that exist rules, and rules exist everywhere. Yeah? In real life, maybe not also in virtual life. So why rules should exist, and only one point: how to organize this mechanism of these rules, and how it should which functions should make this virtual or cyber patrol in Lithuanian internet area. But in any way, from my point of view, these two examples showing that much more successful examples are when people voluntarily participating in these processes. For example, I mentioned elves, and I think that maybe grassroots movements, maybe this more initiative of civil society in social networks could be kind of answer to this challenge, because I am agree that it should be legislation, it should be European level, and I am agree with Aura, but it's on another hand, I think that if people could recognize disinformation, if people will first analyze information and not share it, or analyze it before share, yeah, we will have much more safety environment of social networks. So, and my last point here is I'm supporting idea about mass media. I'm supporting this idea of media education, and it should be broad, and I hope that sooner or later we will have this media literacy education in primary schools, in the universities, and not only for humanitarian or social studies. So my point is people, it's civil society, and responsibility of civil society in the social networks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Denisenko. Just maybe again, a quick follow-up question. The pandemic has obviously been a huge challenge for all of us, also in terms of the information landscape. How do you see the developments over the last year or so, especially in the media environment and social media in the Baltic states?
When we're talking about pandemic, I could mention that I was a little bit surprised when saw how, for example, Kremlin propaganda adopt narratives of this COVID-19 to old adopt these narratives for own purpose, because in fact this COVID agenda was involved into old narratives, and just few examples when it was a new narrative that okay, you in Baltic states should be aware about real challenge. It means about COVID, and COVID is real challenge, and Russian threat doesn't exist. So focused on this, or of course many conspiracy theories about COVID-19 and 5G, for example, and so on, so on. So I think that nowadays infodemic show us how with disinformation could very fast react to topical agenda setting.
Thank you, Mr. Denisenko. I'm really happy to see that member of the European Parliament, Rasa Juknevičienė, has joined us. Welcome. I'll maybe give the floor to Ms. Dr. Spahn before you, just to get you some time, to give you some time to get into the discussion. So, Dr. Spahn, please.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this event. Today, I'm going to talk about Russian disinformation and the role of Russian media in Germany. So I've been conducting research on this topic for nearly 7 years now. 3 studies were published in German, English, and Russian. So I'm mainly focusing on the Russian state media, RT Germany and Sputnik SNA. So first of all, I think it's very important to understand that they regard themselves as weapons in an information war. And their main strategy is to use discontent in society and dissatisfied people as fighters against the system. And this is a quote of the IT editor-in-chief, Margarita Simonyan. She directly said this in an interview with Lentaro. So what's the reporting about? The aim is to use crises to split society. So this was seen, first of all, during the refugee crisis, then we had Brexit, now, of course, Corona crisis. And currently reporting clearly addresses the critics of measures against Corona crisis. And we have this a special group in Germany called Querdenker, sort of unconventional thinkers. So currently they are the main target. And what's the reporting about? So it's very polarized. So on the one hand, the German government is depicted as being helpless. And on the other hand, the Russian authoritarian system and especially President Putin as effective managers. So in the beginning, the Russian state media completely denied the epidemic and described the measures as being senseless. And now the reporting is more about this alleged freedom in Russia. So you can go to restaurants and wherever you want. And on the other hand, you have this eternal lockdown in Germany, and life is depicted as being in a prison in Germany. So you have always these extremes in reporting. And there are also fake news being used. For example, there was a report of Sputnik stating that authorities even can use weapons to force people to stay in lockdown. So that is obviously isn't true, of course. So I think it's also very interesting to look at the budget of RT and Rasa Sivonia. So Rasa Sivonia is the agency that runs Sputnik. It's very well financed. So we have a common budget of both that rose from 420 million in 2020 to 588 million this year. And if you compare this to the budget of our German foreign broadcaster, Deutsche Welle, it's 388 million euros. So this is significantly less. And here you can see that this media and information policy is a very high priority in Russia. So what are the Russian objectives in Germany? So first of all, I think it's important to spread Russian narratives on controversial issues. So still a very popular issue, of course, is Ukraine. So Ukraine is still depicted as allegedly being a Nazi regime, or at least heavily influenced by nationalists. Kiev waging a civil war against the People's Republic in the Donbass. And this aims to distract from Russian military intervention in East Ukraine. Another important topic is the poisoning of Navalny. Here, the aim was to sow doubt that the poisoning is real. And after the statement of our Chancellor Merkel that there's undoubted proof that this poisoning has taken place. The aim was to question this statement and to blame the German government to prevent to solve this case. So this is concerning controversial issues. I think the second and also very important task is to influence elections. So I took part in a monitoring project of Land School of Economics, and we examined the influence that was exerted on the German federal elections in 2017. So with Anne Applebaum and Peter Pomerantsev, they are regarded as good experts on Russian disinformation. And here we found out that the Russian state media clearly supported the extremist parties Alternative for Germany and the left on the one hand, and on the other hand, they organized a smear campaign against Chancellor Merkel. So again, here you can see this very polarized kind of reporting. And then, of course, I continued doing research on these elections issues. And I examined the reporting on the Bavarian elections in 2018 and European elections 2019. And here you could see this continuous support of these extremist parties, Alternative for Germany and the left. So I think this is very interesting. And of course, it's interesting to see what's going on this year and if this tendency is going on. So thirdly, I think the main task of the Russian state media in Germany is to show that our system does not work, that our democracy and our institutions allegedly don't function. So to attack traditional media and our democratic institutions. And this is currently done during the Corona crisis, as I depicted before. And the main strategy of the Russian state media is to present themselves as allegedly being alternative to the mainstream. So this is their main, let's say, marketing strategy. And for example, RT presents itself as being independent and a non-profit organization. And when it comes to this video agency Rapli and this new social media companies, Mafic Media and Redfish, they even hide the Russian origin. So there is no indication at all that they are financed by the Russian government. And I think this is a problem because on this grounds, they can present themselves as allegedly being an independent alternative. And I think this the strategy works quite well with regard to this dissatisfied people, this so-called Querdenker and others who aren't happy with the situation in Germany. So which are the main problems in Germany concerning the Russian state media? I think first of all, there's still a lack of transparency, as I said before. It's still possible to hide the Russian financing and Russian origin. Then, of course, they don't follow any journalistic standards and are allowed to misuse our freedom of speech and press. Then thirdly, I think it's also a problem that we have no national media regulator. So the questions of licensees is solved differently in every federal state. And this is also a problem, especially this year, because RT Germany wants to get a license for a live channel in Germany. So last but not least, I think it's a problem that our government does not tackle this problem enough, except for the Office for the Protection of the Constitution that has clearly warned of Russian disinformation concerning the Corona crisis, for example. So finally, I would like to draw my conclusion. I think Germany is in an election year again, and I think it's very important for us to understand and to act and not to give the Russian state media the opportunity to act as an instrument of an information war again, as it has been before. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. I surely have some follow-up questions, but I know how tight is the schedule of Ms. Rasa Juknevičienė, so I would like to now give the floor for you.
Thank you so much, and sorry for some mistake done on my agenda on time, because I expected the beginning will be at 1 o'clock Brussels time. So sorry for that. And I had to change very quickly the meetings. So first of all, I would like to thank for invitation, and I will start with congratulating Linas Kojala on his next term as head of Eastern European Study Center. So happy to see you on this position again. But I will start my presentation with the very sad news. They are related with our topic, because my neighbor, where I live in Lithuania, is being buried today, who was scared to get vaccinated against COVID due to a lot of fake information on social networks. She was only 55. She had some additional diseases, and she had to be vaccinated a long time ago, but she didn't. So it is very concrete and real evidence of damage which we get from disinformation on not only on online, but also from other sources of information. So my short, maybe I hope will be short presentation, will be of two parts. First, I would like to tell a little bit about the efforts in European Parliament to deal with the disinformation, and second one on economic damage of disinformation. The European Parliament set up the special committee, INGE committee. The full name is Committee on Foreign Interference in all democratic processes in the European Union, including disinformation. So foreign interference and disinformation are maybe the underlining main words in the name of the committee. We started in June 2020, I'm a member of that committee, and its goal is to define an approach to addressing evidence of foreign interference in the democratic institutions and processes of the EU and its member states. Since the first meeting in September, the committee has investigated foreign interference in the public and political domains through a series of hearings with experts. Last one, for example, 15th of June, was on history, how history is used for disinformation and for hybrid warfare against European Union countries. Special report will be provided by autumn this year, and well-known and long-serving member of parliament from Latvia, Sandra Kalnete, is the main rapporteur on this very important issue. Regarding preparation against foreign interference, Europe has long acted as if it had no reason to fear and nothing to protect. Without a doubt, online platforms have revolutionized democracy and our daily lives. We cannot imagine today without Facebook, Twitter, or other platforms. We use them today. Whether we speak about personal or professional contacts, access to information, rooms of free speech for dissidents, especially we see importance of platforms, social platforms, for example, in Belarus, Russia, other autocratic countries, no doubts that is utmost important for them. Or if we would like to have an accessible scene for discussions about life and society, online platforms have led to immense improvements in almost any area, and what we are doing today is the example. In addition, many of these services are available to citizens for free or at very low costs. Our investigations in the INGE committee have already shown loopholes, lack of coordination, lack of sufficient resources, lack of legislation, and even a certain lack of imagination. In addition, the spread of COVID-19 related disinformation affirms the need for a more robust and better coordinated EU effort to counter disinformation, broadly conceived. One of the reasons is obviously the lack of hard evidence. It is very difficult to prove exactly how foreign actors try to interfere in our democratic processes and how successful they are. What has emerged at the surface is only the tip of the iceberg. As we have seen, however, it is not difficult to spot far too many vulnerabilities in our societies. Vulnerabilities that could be exploited to disrupt, disturb, and manipulate by those willing to do so. It is also not very difficult to see that EU and national legislators have yet to properly do our work protecting the fundamental rights of the citizens of our Union. Often rules concerning offline behavior are either not implemented online or not adopted to the online environment. This concerns all aspects, be it rules of harassment, privacy infringements, hate speech, advertisement regulation, or hoax reports of emergencies. These are maybe our provisional, we were discussing now provisional documents before the final report we will discuss later this year. But even today, we already have some topics we put on our papers to have as a fundament for our final report. So how to strengthen our protection against foreign interference? It's not only about online disinformation, but all kinds, of course, of disinformations. First of all, cooperation with democratic allies. It's mainly this foreign interference related with disinformation is attack against democracies, be it in the United States, be it Germany, be it Lithuania, or be it Ukraine, which is not a member of any alliance as we are today. So cooperation is utmost important. Invest in research and protection of researchers. Proper sanctions needed to interrupt and deter interference. Using freedom of expression as an excuse to allow threats and harassments. We see how Russia, for example, they are using democracy against democracy. Democratic tools, they use democratic tools against democracies, themselves being not democracy at all. Speaking about freedom of speech or something like that. Spreading, by the way, lies. It's not related with freedom of speech. Everybody should enjoy the same protection as English users. It's maybe a small detail, but it's also important because many people don't understand English, but using, for example, Facebook, and they are touched by damages. Reducing vulnerabilities linked to collections of personal data. Fixing the algorithm. Advertising mechanisms should not fund disinformation or radicalize target audiences. Work harder against online threats and harassments. Right to appeal. Transparency and anonymity. Media literacy and awareness raising. Update legislation and co-legislation to the digital age. So a lot of points, a lot of important issues we already put on the table to discuss and to elaborate together with later, of course, together with other institutions of European Union. Now I would like to move into the second part of my intervention, which I wanted to touch upon. Is also not only about online related issues, but on economical damage. It's quite new what we will discuss in autumn session in our committee as well. It's already included into our agenda. We will invite important and experienced experts to speak on that issue. And European Commission has recently published EU Digital Service Act and European Democracy Action Plan. These two documents set EU actions and shape EU agenda in tackling disinformation for at least 5 years. The EU institutions and member states have already made a huge effort defining and analyzing the malicious interference and gathered a unique database of disinformation patterns. The EU has also set out an ambition to impose costs of those who disseminate disinformation. However, this is hardly possible without a thorough analysis of economic damage of disinformation, regretfully still overlooked in major EU documents. What does it mean, economic impact? Economic impact of disinformation is ranging from local financial damage to viral stories that could drive economic and political events. Disinformation polarizes societies and may cause political instability. Somehow we face the beginning of such effects in Lithuania, I think, when we speak about some important initiatives, for example, on so-called Istanbul Convention or partnership law in our parliament. Disinformation and other types of malicious interference has already contributed to loss of faith in institutions, inflicted reputational damage on democratic governance, and has required substantial resources to correct false statements across the EU. It may also cause real material damage. For example, in 2020, it was already, I think, mentioned, I heard about such issue. Tens of 5G masts were set on fire or otherwise vandalized across Europe by believers in conspiracy that 5G internet was behind the coronavirus outbreak. Vandalism brought real financial damage to telecom and dependent companies. In the current setting, questioning the benefits of vaccination against COVID-19 and pandemic-related disinformation campaigns can lengthen substantially the crisis and deepen the economic damage. I already mentioned about one example from my nearest neighborhood. A deteriorated cohesion of society due to protracted crisis raises the possibility of the surge of extreme political positions with related economic consequences. According to Global Disinformation Index, around 20,000 websites posing a disinformation risk generate an estimated 213 million euros annually. Google, Amazon, and OpenX account for 95% of the ad revenues cashed by COVID-19 disinformation websites, according to the study. Those sites include well-known disinformation sources, such as already mentioned RT, Russia Today.com, the study said. Knowing how big the economic damage caused by disinformation is, the EU will find the right tools to protect itself. So this is what I wanted to underline and to mention during my presentation, and thank you again for for invitation.
Thank you very much for your comprehensive overview of the situation from the EU perspective. We have around 10 minutes left, so I would like to give an opportunity for those who've joined us on Zoom to ask a question. If there is anyone willing to ask a question, please indicate that to me. Okay, I see one hand raised. Please, Mr. Justinas Kulys.
So thank you to the speakers for sharing their insights with us. As we know, European Union is doing a lot in creating a safer and more transparent infosphere for its citizens, and there are very important initiatives protecting each of us in the internet. So my question is the European Union able and willing to help its neighbors in the Eastern Partnership and Western Balkan countries to counter the informational threats in their infospheres, not only by financing the civic initiatives that are very important, but also by helping them to improve their legal basis so it could effectively meet today's challenges and defend their citizens? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see another question in a written form, so I will read that out to you and then give an opportunity for each of the panelists to react either to both questions or to one of those. So a question by Arnas. I would like to ask all the speakers about the micro level. I think many of us have relatives, friends who have already been affected by the wrong information or misinformation. How to show them briefly and clearly that they are wrong, that they are in a social bubble? How do you personally deal with such issues and talk with such people? The reaction of these people to questioning, debating recent issues is often extremely aggressive. It's a really complicated task. I think all of us have noted that in our personal experiences. So again, I would like to give the floor to each of the speakers to briefly react to these questions, and with that also to make some concluding remarks as we're approaching the end of this event. Ms. Sala, please.
Thank you so much. The first question I think goes more to the European Parliament, but of course we do our utmost in the whole region, not only in the EU. And we have fact checkers, like we have, for example, in Lithuania, fact checkers in their own languages, because I share, Honorable MEP, this view that we need to have these fact checkers in our own languages. I myself come from the country that we don't really have any other languages that you can compare, and it's very important that we can tackle misinformation and disinformation in different languages, and also understanding the cultural background. What I already actually mentioned is that our tactic is not only take down harmful content, but also label that, because this brings me to this question that we see on the chat. It is not only that you live in your own social bubble, you need to be conveyed to rightful information and facts. And that's why we decided that we also, our fact checkers add there in people's own language, the facts of the questions or misleading information that might have been posted there. Of course, we need to remember that on social media platforms, people are allowed to have their opinions. It's not Wikipedia, it's a social media platform. However, for example, this COVID-19 misinformation, we take very seriously. And we are actually taking down all kind of misleading information regarding the COVID-19. We have labeled warnings around 200 million pieces of misinformation, and we take down like millions and hundreds of millions of pieces every month, basically. And we have connected more than 2 billion people globally with reliable information about this pandemic, because we know how important it is to actually team up with healthcare authorities in Lithuania, for example, to enable them to provide right information. So if you go to your Facebook newsfeed, you actually see the COVID-19 hub there in your own language, because we understand how important it is. And that's why we launched also this center where you can find these facts. Same thing goes with vaccines now. So I would say that we do our best effort, not only in EU countries, but also in the neighboring countries. But now we are looking forward to seeing the democracy action plan coming from the EU Commission actually later this year, these concrete proposals. And we expect that there is also very concrete action when it comes to political ads, for example, on platforms to secure our democracy in the EU.
Thank you very much. Ms. Juknevičienė, just to make sure you have still some time, maybe you would like to say some words on this?
Yes, I can say some words, and I have to leave for shortly. So, is EU ready to help Eastern Partnership countries? You know, sometimes I feel that, for example, Ukraine has much more experience on hybrid warfare, on Russian attacks against Ukraine, be it the cyber, be it disinformation, than some European Union countries, because they have experience even from Soviet time, when people like me, we grew up on the in the country where lie was the fundament of or one of the fundaments of Soviet Union, and we were experienced not to believe, and we knew how to read newspapers. We knew that newspapers are lying. So in Western countries, so-called Western countries, they didn't have this experience, at least after World War II. So for them, maybe sometimes is much more difficult to realize how that even leaders of the countries, they can lie so brutally. And it's some kind of new experience for many countries for last 10 years, for example, on that. So yes, of course, it's included. We are taking also experience from countries like Ukraine, and it's our common task, of course, because it's no borders for lie and to spread the lie, especially online, which goes online. So it's very important what Stratcom in EU, they are doing. They are sending every week information, and they are debunking, or they are sending information about fake news, saying that these news are fake news. So it's very important what they are doing, and every country has, I think, the same. How personally we help? Also a good question. Is, of course, we have to work every day on that. For example, myself, I am leading local, my party branch in Lithuania, and I am in connection almost every day with the people on a messenger chat, and I am trying to explain them how important is not to trust everything what is online on their screen when they are scrolling every day, be it important message or be it fake news. So it's not easy, of course, education, and once again, education. We see many people, they live in their bubble and they believe in those fake news, and it's very difficult to change their understanding. And I think that it's a challenge for many of us. The most important thing is that we also speak about in this special committee, we speak about foreign interference, but the same standards sometimes, or anti-standards, they are spread inside the countries. And we see that the same style fake news and the same style of behavior in political level, especially in some marginals, those political parties, they are anti-systemic, and they are exactly using Kremlin style of behavior during elections, or trying to convince people. So I think this is quite a danger. It's like a pandemia. It's like an infodemia, which is as infectious disease. So even people in democratic countries, or politicians in democratic countries, they are using these methods of fake news to act and take over election or something like that.
Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us today. Mr. Denisenko, please.
I think I will try to answer Arna's question. It's a very difficult and very complicated question, and maybe we, in this situation, we could try to do some little things. Maybe involve this person in the discussion, or softly show logical mistakes in some narratives. We could also offer or ask to, okay, let's analyze together this narrative or this message. It could work. Maybe it, in some cases it will work, in some cases not, but I think it's only one way. Or you, okay, for example, it was mentioned this narrative about 5G and COVID, yeah, and you could just ask, okay, maybe, but could you explain how it works, how this 5G spreading COVID virus? I'm very curious about it. And a person, if he or she will start to explain it, he or she will, maybe, I hope, will see these logical mistakes or lack of logic in this kind of narrative. We just should try. Thank you.
Thank you for the optimistic note. Dr. Spahn?
Well, I focus on Russian disinformation in Germany, so I would like to tell you what should be done in Germany. I think it would be very important to improve transparency and not to give RT and Sputnik the chance to present themselves as independent and alternative sources. And it would be very logic to create a national media regulator who could do this and who could also follow the reporting if it corresponds to journalistic standards, and if not, possibly fine them. For example, as the British Ofcom has done during the Skripal's case. So I think this is a good example. And well, generally, I think the German government should tackle this problem more actively and raise public awareness. So I think the first step would be firstly to talk about this problem. I think the public awareness in Germany is still low, and the first step would be to talk about it, to tell people that these are not traditional media but tools of an information warfare, and to start a public discussion on what should be done to tackle this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Fantastic insights from all of you. It was a very interesting discussion. More questions as usual than answers, but I think it shows how complex the issue is, and hopefully we'll have more opportunities to discuss it in the future. And the final word is to Ms. Elisabeth Bauer, of course, the organizer of the event. Sorry, you're on mute.
Sorry. Thank you again, all of you, that you stayed with us for the time. And if you see to the chat, Rasa put in the link to the report from Facebook, so you might have the opportunity to have a look for that. But we will send it out to all the participants again as well. And there will be, in some time, there will be a YouTube video will be on our channel, so you can have him as well. You can listen to it again. Thank you for being with us. Have a good time. Have a good summer break, because I think we won't see, most of us won't see each other again before the summer break, because in the north, the Baltic, that's very similar from the Baltic countries to the Nordic countries. After 23rd of June, nothing is happening for quite a while. So thanks a lot for being with us, and have a good time. Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right.